Welcome to this edition of the Suitcase Sessions podcast. I'm your host, Bob Bowman. Today, I want to talk about what makes a cigar box guitar. How's it different from the standard six-string acoustic or electric guitars we're all familiar with? How are they tuned? Do they need a truss rod? Can we vary from the parts and components of a standard guitar? Well, in this episode, I'll try to address all of these questions and show you just how much fun you can have building your own cigar box guitar. You know, Son House said, "You can sing the blues in church if you use the words right." And when you think about it, that's exactly the approach we take when making a cigar box guitar. Most of us are untrained luthiers, and yet if you get the art right, you can play that cigar box guitar in concert and nobody will judge you for the number of strings or what it looks like in your hands. Initially, they'll only hear the music and they'll ignore the box and the stick that's coming from. But before you realize it, they will all be amazed at the emotion you're able to convey from that cigar box guitar. So, for the next few minutes, let's find a place in the shade, set down our suitcase and cigar box guitar, and enjoy the show. I want to begin with the standards of a six-string acoustic or electric guitar. They all have a body. That body is either solid or hollow. They all have a bridge. That bridge is either a wood saddle with a bone or a metal roller style. They have sound holes, either single large sound holes or stylized F-holes of some sort. They have pickups in them, mostly humbuckers, but some acoustics have a rod pickup in them. They have necks and fretboards made of rosewood and maple. They have a nut, which is typically bone. They have a headstock that's angled. There are mechanical tuners on that headstock, and they use standard gauge strings, either light or heavy, and typically a range on a six-string from light to heavy. And that's pretty much it. That's your standard six-string guitar. Variations on the body style, of course, exist. Variations in the fretboard markings exist. Fancy or not so fancy tuners are used. Maybe some inlay on the body of the box itself. Pretty much, that's what you get. On page 16 and 17 of David Sutton's book entitled Cigar Box Guitars, the Ultimate Do-It-Yourself Guide for Makers and Players of the Handmade Music Revolution, you'll find a foreword by Mark Fraunfelder. There, Mark points out that there are 4 qualities in making cigar box guitars. First, every cigar box guitar has a personality. Second, cigar box guitars can be made from all kinds of junk. Third, mistakes often improve cigar box guitars. And finally, you truly own your cigar box guitar. Well, that said, I want to have you listen to or perhaps watch for my focus on number 2. Cigar box guitars can be made from all kinds of junk. So let's start with the body. The body, of course, as we know, in our topic is going to be the standard cigar box guitar. That cigar box is preferably wood, most of them are, and you want to use one that's appropriate to the size of the scale length that you're building to. And often you'll want to reinforce the interior of that cigar box with a beefier stock of wood. That also gives it some weight to provide a decent balance in your hand, because a cigar box is typically made from some sort of Spanish cedar, which is a fairly light wood to hold in your hand, no matter the size of the box. The sound holes, those can be all kinds of things, and this is where it gets fun. In my hand, I have a Peerless laundry tub strainer cup, stainless steel. These make excellent sound holes. This is a smaller one, but I have also a 2-inch snap-in tub strainer in gold. And look at that. That would make for an excellent sound hole cover. Just drill your hole and snap one of these into that 2-inch hole. Now, if you really want to be creative, as if sink drains aren't creative enough, you can get mason jar lids that have sort of a flower or sunburst pattern to them right off the shelf. They're metal. You drill the hole, you inset it, and has even a resonating quality. If you're smart, and we'll get to this in a minute, you can have something on the inside vibrating off of those metal covers. Now, if you're wanting a really big hole, you can get a speaker cover or a big shower floor drain cover like this one. So as you can see, those holes can be just about anything. Now, I'm searching here on my desk as we are speaking, but you could use a standard metal grommet like this 3/4 inch brass grommet you would get at any hardware store, or you could use, just the standard bit on your drill or drill press to make a large hole in your box. Sky's the limit. You can stylize those F holes. You can make musical notes as a sound hole. You can do lightning bolts as a sound hole. In fact, as a retired Navy sailor, I've made Navy rating insignias for photographers' mates that were stylized sound holes. So you can have all kinds of fun with the sound holes themselves. Now the saddle, that can be a piece of wood, of course, or you could use the box itself to put those on. But for the bridge, they make metal roller style bridges for 1, 3, 4, up to 6 strings. So you can use a standard metal roller style bridge for any of the guitars you make. You could use, of course, a nut and a bolt, and maybe a brass bolt and nut would work for you. You could use a large skeleton key like the one I'm holding right here in my hand as the bridge. You can use an antler and a piece of bone of any kind. A piece of wood, of course, would work just fine, like this piece of dowel rod right here. Just file off the notches for the number of strings, lay it on the box, and you're good to go. You could use a door hinge bolt, a cabinet door handle like this one. Imagine what you could do with this particular one. Just drill your holes, put it in a box, run your strings over that, file a couple of file marks in there for the number of strings you have, and you got you a pretty cool bridge made out of a cabinet door handle, just like that one. From there, we have tails, of course, on a cigar box guitar. Sometimes we connect the neck through the box and we'll bring the strings up through the tail. And you might want to use rivets there to pull the strings through so that the string tension doesn't pull through the grain of the neck itself. But you could also use a spatula. And if you didn't want to use the spatula, you could use a hinge like this one right here. These are pretty popular. They've already got some holes in them. You can run your strings through those, bolt the other side onto the edge of the box, and you're good to go with a pretty fancy string holder. Now, I was at an antique store once and I found this steel handlebar mustache. Now, this is a magnet, but I looked at it and I said to my wife, you know what? That would make an outstanding tailpiece. In fact, I could run my strings through that by drilling 3 holes through the top of that handlebar mustache and using the lower end of that handlebar mustache to bolt it or screw it to the box itself. And that would be pretty fun to do. So I've used those. Now, if you wanted to make your guitar a resonator, think of what you could do there. You could use, of course, like the one you see on the wall behind me, a metal paint can lid for a resonator. You could use a small metal dish like the one I'm holding here that I got at an antique shop. You could use a license plate, of course, and you could also affix inside the box, hidden from everybody, to their eye, a spring, and pull that spring apart, and it'll vibrate when the strings are plucked. The spring inside will vibrate, and it'll form an extra resonator for you. Now, something fun would be the control knobs. I was at a antique shop, and I found these old metal water knobs. One's blue, one's red, and it's just like a spigot handle or knob. And I thought to myself, now that would make for a great volume and tone knob. So you can really be creative with this process when you think through it a little bit. Now for the pickups, you can use a wound coil pickup. In fact, a humbucker that's flat and surface mounted works great. One of the things I like to do is take an old Altoids can or Fisherman's Friend can like this. The cough drops come in, and put your humbucker pickup or your coil pickup on the inside and bed this down into the box and run the strings right over the top of this. But you also have something pretty cool to look at if the box is a plain wooden box, because all of these have some pretty neat graphics on it, just like this Fisherman's Friend one in my hand. So you could also ghost that pickup. You could glue it to the underside of the box or the underside of the license plate. If you're using a license plate resonator on your box, you can ghost that pickup underneath it, so you'll still get that good electric tone out of it. Now, I talked a little bit about those control knobs with those spigots, but you could use wood control knobs, standard metal volume and tone knobs. You could use a shotgun shell brass for a volume and tone knob. I've done that, and any variation from there that you can think of, pretty much. The uh, or the old radio dial knobs, you could use those. So for the neck, you typically use a hardwood for the neck: maple, oak, poplar, walnut, hickory, ash. You get the drift there. And some of those necks will either be bolt on or go through the box and have a heel to it. The fretboards are typically a hardwood, like a rosewood, something typically that contrasts with the neck itself just a little bit, so you can see the difference in the woods. And those fretboards either have frets in them, the standard frets, the jumbo or zero frets that we all have seen. However, you can get creative here too. I've seen nails with the heads clipped off used as frets, as well as toothpicks and zip ties. So that would be pretty fun to do as well. Sometimes you want to use just a slide on your guitar, so you can make a fretless guitar. Well, those fret markers can be wood burned in or scored with something heavy. You could use inlays like the one on the wall behind me that has dark walnut on an oak fretboard, or you could use purple heart against your maple. Something with a high contrast like that tends to work. You can use a magic marker. You could put screws in at the 3, 5, 7, 9, 12 fret marker, so you know where to run your slide to. Sky's the limit there as well. Now, those markers, the dot markers like you would see on a standard, you can put those on there too if it's a fretted one. You can use plastic. You can use those punches, plastic hole punches, to make your own. You could use the nail heads. You can put screws in there, or bullet casings. I've used 22 bullet casings for fret markers in the past. And again, you could also wood burn the fret markers on there. For the nut, so you could use a piece of bone, again, like the standard. You could use that bolt that I talked about earlier, like this one. And what's really nice is the threads, if they're wide enough, will hold that string into place pretty well. It won't slip around. You don't have to file a slot there for the string most times. But you could also use a skeleton key. This is a smaller version of the earlier one I showed for the bridge, but you could use a skeleton key and just file the string notches out for that and use that as your nut. And of course, you could use those zero or jumbo frets for your nut as well. Now, on the headstock, for your cigar box guitar, those can also be angled just like the standards, or you can make them flat. I have an example of both of those on the wall behind me, both angled and flat. You don't need to do anything fancy with them. For the mechanical tuners, typically the tuners, they can either be mechanical or wooden pegs or eye screws. It's up to you, really. The tuning, how do you tune a 3-string cigar box guitar? typically we tune it to GDG, which is a standard open G. Some people also like to tune to an open D or DAD or an open E, EBE. So that's pretty much across the board. You find you whatever open note you want, and you can tune it to that in that way. I talked earlier about the truss rods. Do you really need one? Usually not. They're usually not needed unless you're building a mandolin or a bass, and that's solely based on the string tension. But for a single string diddly bow or a simple 2-string chugger or a 3 or 4-string cigar box guitars, there's not enough string tension on them to warrant a truss rod. You might want a heel or something to support your neck against the box, like this corner bracket, so that it doesn't bend, and hopefully you're putting a proper back angle on your neck through the box so that you accommodate for the string action and how the tension plays against the neck as well. Now, speaking of the action and the string tension, I wanted to also point out that these can be fretted for dulcimer or diatonic, the standard do, re, mi notes, to make it super easy, or the chromatic or standard like you would see on a 6-string guitar for those fret markers, by the way. Strings, same. You're going to use the A, G, and B strings from a standard pack for your 3-string, or you can decide upon any variation of light to heavy gauge strings from 0.09 all the way up to 0.44, 46, whatever your preferences are. And those can be bronze phosphorus wound, or they could be, steel, nickel wound, or just standard metal strings. Unless you use plastic, but you're going to use those for a ukulele. You're probably not going to use those for a cigar box guitar. So pretty much sky's the limit. You can do almost anything you want. You just have to start looking through a different lens when you're out and about shopping at the store, and see things not for what they are, but what they could be. And maybe you're looking at a little MRE, meal ready to eat, in the military, and you're seeing your little Tabasco jar that comes in the box, and you're saying, wow, that would make an excellent bridge for my diddly bow, my 2-string chugger, and I could use that as my bridge. I'll just make myself a saddle for it to sit on. But again, sky's the limit. Now, I want to close there and share a quote with you to illustrate the simplicity of the instrument. And truly, there really are no rules. Lightning Hopkins said, "So I went ahead and made me a guitar. I got me a cigar box. I cut me a round hole in the middle of it, take me a little piece of plank, nailed it onto that cigar box, and I got me some screen wire. And I made me a bridge back there and raised it up high enough that it would sound inside that little box, and got me a tune out of it. I kept my tune, and I played from then on." So a box, a stick, some string, and you pretty much have a work of art to play. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Suitcase Sessions. If you're enjoying the show, why not hit that subscribe button and follow us each week as we explore the world of cigar box guitars. Until then, remember, there are no rules. Just keep playing, and we'll catch up later, somewhere down the road.